Hello, it's Ashley. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll be learning how to make these simple bead sandals. Without much being said, let's get into it. So you're going to need your pair of slippers. Today too, I'm using a size 10. You're going to need your beads. I'm using two color beads. This is 5mm beads. So I'm using yellow 6mm beads and 5mm beads. You're going to need your thread. I'm using 0.3, some needles, a plier, a blade, and a pair of scissors. Today the net I'll be using gold because my lining beads is yellow, so I want to use gold. And then you're going to need a Byers, and then you need glue. So this is pretty much all you need for it. These are all things you can find in your local bead store. They are very easy to find. Any bead store you walk in, you're going to find them. So you just pick a needle. I'm just going to pick a medium-sized needle because I'm going to use it for the beading and I'm going to use it for the stitching as well. I don't like changing needles in between work, so I'm going to pick a medium size. Line your needle up as usual. Remember to cut the thread as long as you can handle. If it's too long, it will get tangled up. If it's too short, you have to be joining it along the way. So cut it as long as you can handle. So with this, so instead of the 4 we usually start with, today we'll be starting with 6 beads. We'll start with the 5mm beads first. So 6 of the 5mm beads. When I say 5mm beads, I mean the black one. That one size is 5mm, and the other one is pearls, 6mm beads pearls. So those are 6 beads. So tie and make a knot. Pull very hard to make sure it's really tight. Make another knot to secure it. And then you pass your needle through a couple of beads away from where you made the knot, so that when you pull, the knot will be hidden in between beads. Then you can cut off your excess thread. So I'm pulling to make sure my knot is really hidden. So now it's hidden. I'll just cut off the excess thread. If you don't cut off the excess thread, it makes it very hard when you working. It tangles up your thread for you. So always cut off your excess thread where there is some, and then continue with your work. So after the 6 beads, now we're going to be continuing with 5 beads. So you put 5 beads in the needle, and then you pass the needle through the opposite side of where the thread is. So the thread is at this side, will pass the needle through the other side of the same bead, and then you pull and then pass it through all the way up to the 5th bead. Sorry, thread is tangling up. So you get something like this. You're going to be getting circles like that. So from now on, you're just going to be adding 5. You start with 6 and then you continue adding 5. I'm using a size 10 slipper, so we're going to need 13 of that. If you were using a size 11 or 10.5, you're going to need 14 of that. And if you're using a size 9.5, you're going to need 12 of that. But I'm using size 10, so I'm going to make 13 of that. So you're going to continue adding 5 beads until you get 13 circles. So continue until you get to 13, and then we'll meet up, and then I'll show you what to do after that. So this is my 12th one, I think. This should be my 12th circle. I'm not sure. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 12. So I need one more. So I'm going to add 5 beads. Sorry. Okay, so now I have 13. 12, 13. So we'll stop working it, how do I say it, to the length. So now we want to work with the height, work on the height, sorry. So you're going to send the needle through a couple of beads up, which is three beads on the top line, and then you're going to add four beads, and then you're going to leave out the first bead, and then insert your needle in the second bead, pass it all the way to the fourth bead from where you inserted the needle. I don't know if what I'm saying is too complicated, right? So just leave out the first and last beads with this one too. That's how we're going to work on it. You always leave out the first and last beads. So with this one, you start with 4 and then you continue with 3, 3, 3, working on each circle. So one bead from one circle, the other bead from the other circle. That's how it's going to be joining them. So one bead from this circle, one bead from the other circle. That's how you pass the needle through. Then you add your beads again. So 3 beads. Pass it down through the same beads that the thread is in. Good. And now you're going to pass it through 2 more beads. So one bead from that circle and then one bead from the other circle. So that's how you're going to continue doing it. So you get to the end and then you leave out the last bead. So continue till you get to the end. So I have gotten to the end of it. So I'm going to just add my last couple of beads. So 3 beads. And then I'll pass it through. Send it to the next 2 beads. Now I'll start with 3 beads on the way. So I'll use 2 and leave out the last one. So that we'll get that shaped, that triangular shape. So you add 3 beads, leaving out the last one, and then work on the remaining ones. That way you get this shape. So that's how we're going to be working it. I need to join the thread. So when you need to join a thread, make sure you pass your needle through a couple of beads, make a knot, pass it through a couple of beads again to hide your knot, and then you cut it off and then line your needle up again and then join it. If you just cut it off, then you've just all the work you've done, nothing is going to remove on its own. So pass it through a couple of beads, make a knot, pass it through a couple of beads more, hide your knot and cut off. Line your needle up and then do the same thing and send the needle all the way to where your work ended, and then continue from there. So I'm going to join my needle a little bit far away from where my work ended, and then I'll make the knot and then pass it all the way to where the work ended and then continue working. You don't want to just begin at where your work ended and make the knot there. So you want to make the knot a bit far away from it so you can hide your knot in between beads. So now I've gotten to where my work ended. So I'll leave out the first bead again and then start with my four beads and then pass it through the next two beads. Since I've left out the first one, I'll pass it through the next two beads. So we now continue with 3, 3, 3, 3 until we get to the end. So this is the third row we are working on, and then we'll need 8 rows. So you're just going to continue the same process until you get to the 8th row, but I'll come back when I get to the 7th row. So I'm at the 7th row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's work the last row together, because I need to show you how you work the last row. As usual, the last row till you leave out the first bead, add your 4 beads, pass it through the next 2 beads like that. But instead of continuing that way, you want to bring it back. You want to bring your needle all the way back to the beginning of the row that you just started. So this is the beginning of the row that we just started. So we're going to start another row there. So start with 4. And then you pass it through the next 2 beads, leaving out the first bead. Okay, so you get this. Now you bring it back all the way to the beginning again. And then instead of 4 or 3 this time, you add 5. And then join it, and then you add up another circle. So we need 2 extra circle out of the rolls we've made that way. So now we'll need to send our needle back and then continue with the roll. There. So now we'll continue with our 3 beads again. We'll just do that until we get to the end again, and then we'll do what we just did at the other end. So we've gotten to the end of this row. So we're going to make, okay, we'll start with 4 again. We're going to make a chain of circles, 10 chain of circles. So we start with 4, connect it with the next 2 beads, send the needle all the way to the beginning of just this chain you've started, and then you start adding 5 5 5, just like the beginning, as we did in the beginning. And then we did 13 chains. This one we're going to do 10 chains. So you add 5 more. So you're just going to continue doing that until you get to the 10th chain. So this is it. So that's my 9th chain, my 9th one. So I'll add 1 to make it 10. And that will be all for the back of my sandals. If I was doing this style, there's a style where you don't need to line, you just do this and then that's all you need, and then you stitch it on your slippers. But that's not the style my customer wants, so I'll have to line it. But this is also another style. So I'm passing my needle through a couple of beads away from where it ended. So if it was this style that I was doing, this would have been all for the back, and then you just stitch it on your slippers like that. See? But this is not the style my customer wants, so I'll have to line it. So with the lining, you leave out the first circle and bring your needle to the next middle bead, and then you start with the 6mm beads, and then you line it. The lining is done in between middle beads, so from one middle bead to the other middle bead, from one middle bead to the other middle bead. That's how you do it. You are practically just putting the yellow beads in the circle you've made. So you do it that till you get here. So we're going to leave out the next 2 circles. The one we did before we continue the row, we're leaving that one out. We're not working in them. Usually I leave one out, but I got to a point I'm not certain if it will be the customer size and they will need to adjust it or not. So I started leaving out 2 circles instead of 1. So now you just continue doing the same thing. From one middle bead, you put your yellow color or whatever color you're using, and then to the other middle bead. So you practically just be filling in the circles that are there. Sorry. So you just use the yellow beads and fill in the holes in the circles. I don't know what color you're using, but use the yellow bead to fill in the black ones. So whichever color you're using, you just do the same thing. You're just going to do that till you get to the end of it. There is nothing else to be done on it. This is just what is going to be till the end, and then you make a knot, tie your knot, hide it, cut off your excess thread. That's just going to be it. So do that, and then let's continue. So now I'm done. This is how it looks like. So this is how it's supposed to be. That's it. So let's make the top part of the sandals. You will line up your needle, line up your needle as long as you can handle. And then we'll start with the black beads again. So we'll start with 6. We're just going to make those circle chain that we made earlier. So we start with 6, continue with 5, 5, 5. But this time, instead of 13, we're going to make 11 first. So you tie, pull it hard, tie again to secure it, and then you pass your needle through a couple of beads and then pull to hide the knots that you just made in between beads. Pull hard, and then you hide it in between beads, and then you cut off your excess thread. So now you're going to continue with 5, 5. So continue until you get to the 11th one. Yes, till you get to the 11th circle. That's how many circles we're going to need. And then we're going to change the direction. Right now we're going straight. We're making the circle straight. So when we're getting to the 11th one, we'll change the direction. So that's my 11. Now instead of continuing straight, you bring it a bead down. You bring the needle a bead down, and then you continue with 5, 5. What I mean by a bead down is you pass the needle through the closest bead to it and send it all the way down, and then you start adding 5, 5, 5, 5 more beads to it. And then with that side, instead of 11, we're going to make 10 circles on that chain line. So you're going to continue that way until you count is up to 10, and then you stop. So continue till you get to 10, and then we'll continue late. So this is it for me. 11 on this side. 11. Now when you count from that side all the way down, that's 10. And that's all you need for the top part. So the top 10 part goes to the inside part of the slippers, and then the 11 part goes to the outside part of the slippers. So now we're going to stitch it on the slippers like that. We don't line it like we lined the back. No, we'll have to stitch, because with the stitching you stitch in between middle beads, and the lining is also done in between middle beads. So remember to cut your slippers down so that when you stitch, the thread is hidden in between the cuts that you made. So it's not visible. The thread is not visible. That way the sandals last very long. The sandals last very long. The bead could be on until the slippers itself is pulled. Okay, so pat it a bit and then we're going to stitch it on top of the slippers. Remember, the reason why we didn't line this one is because the stitching is done in between middle beads, and then the lining is also done with the middle beads, so it will be easier if you stitch before lining. It's not that you can't do it, you can, but it's easier if you stitch before you line it. So I'm starting, I need it to be at the top there, but I'm putting my needle and starting my knot at a different direction so that I'll be able to pass it through a couple of beads to hide the knot, so that I get there when the knot is hidden. Oh, sorry. So this is where we want our needle to be. Oh, this is where we want our thread to end up. So you put it on your slippers like this, and then you stitch through that one first. That way. You need your needle to appear at the other side of the same bead, so you push it through that way. When you're stitching, you have to take your time, if not you break your needles a lot. So you just take your time and then push it little by little. Now we're going to do the stitching in between middle beads. So pass your needle to the next middle bead, stitch down. When you stitch down, you stitch up to the other side of the same middle bead. That way. And then you pass it through the same middle bead, and then pass it through a couple of beads to the next middle bead. That way. Send it through the next two beads, and then the next middle bead where you do your stitching there. So you're just going to continue doing that. Actually, this one is very easier to stitch than the first one we did, because there is gap between the middle beads, so it doesn't take much, about 10 stitches, and you are done stitching one side. So continue doing that until you get to the end, and then I'll show you what to do next. Really, stitching on camera is very hard. I know I keep saying it, but it really is. Working on a table generally is very hard. Maybe it's the height of my table, I don't know, but it's really hard. So I'm sorry if my videos are still not to perfection. So now we are at the end. This is the last stitch we'll be doing. So you stitch down, and then you stitch up from the other side of the same middle bead. Like I said, the lining is also done through middle bead, so we're not going to pass it through a couple of beads and make a knot. No, we're just going to work through it. So through the middle beads, and then you bring your lining beads, and then we'll line it all the way up. So yellow to the next middle bead, this way, sorry, and then yellow to the next middle bead, yellow to the next middle bead. You're just going to do that until you get to the end. So when you get to where you started with the stitching, you just stop there, and the last circle where you started with the stitching, you stop there, and then you pass your needle through a couple of beads and then make a knot and hide it. And there is the last circle. So after this, we'll hide our needle, we'll make a knot and hide our thread in between beads, and then we'll start with the stitching for the other side of the slippers too. There, hide it, and then you cut off your excess thread. So you practically just do the same thing you did for this side at the other side. So stitch up, and then this is my last stitch. So going to line the other side too, just like you did the other side. That's the same thing you do for this side. Yellow middle bead, yellow middle bead, yellow middle bead. That's just it, guys. So it's the same thing you did for the other side. That's what you do for the side. And that is it, guys. So tie and hide your knots in between beads, cut off your excess thread, and that will be it. So this is another form of slippers. So if you're doing slippers, simple slippers, you could just leave it at this. It's another form of bead slippers that we do. So you can just leave it at this if you're doing slippers. But then for sandals, it's time to join the back side. So we already cut our slippers, the down of our slippers. So we're just going to start with the stitching. To know where to start with, where the top part ends, put your thumb there. Where your thumb ends, that is where you're supposed to start with your stitching. I don't know if it makes sense. So join your needle far away from where you want, where you're going to start with your stitching, and then pass it through a couple of beads to hide the knot before you get there. So on the down line, the first bead, that one, that's what you start the stitching with. So you put your thumb measure that way. That's what I was talking about. So this is where my thumb ends. That's where I'm starting with the stitching of the back, that way. And then I'm going to make sure that it appears in the line that I made, the cuts that I made, so that I can hide the visibility of the thread that way. See? So if I pass it, stitch it up, it's going to be hidden in between the cuts that I made. I don't know if it makes sense. There. Sorry, long thread. See, you see it's hidden, and that is why I make the cut, to hide the visibility of the thread. Someone asked me that if that is why I cut it, why do I put the net at the end? I said I put the net because it makes the sandals look nice. It's not necessary. The net is not necessary, but it just makes the sandals look nice. So I put it there because I don't stitch to the sideways. Others stitch it to the sideways, but it doesn't keep long. So I like to stitch it this way to make sure that it keeps very long. Now with this one, unlike the other stitching we did, the sandals we did, this one you're going to skip one bead. After you stitch, you skip one bead and stitch through the other one. Do you get it? So see, you leave out the next bead and then stitch with the other one. For the first sandals we did, we stitched through all beads, but this one, when you stitch through one bead, you skip one and go to the other. That's like you stitch one bead from each circle. That's what I'm trying to say, one bead from each circle. So if I stitch one bead from this circle, I skip the next one and then go to the next bead of the other circle. Okay. So that's just how you're going to continue stitching. So stitch through it until we get to the end. Make sure your needle passes through the cuts that you made to hide your thread. So stitch up, guys. Stitch, skip one bead, and then this is my last bead. So when you're done with your last stitch, you want to send your needle up from the you want to send it far away from where the stitching is done. So you send it up towards your, how do they call that side? Is it ankle? I don't know. No, not the ankle. I don't know what that side is called, but at the top, you just be heading towards the top. And then if your thread won't reach there, that's fine. Somewhere along the line, you make a knot, hide your knot, and cut off your straight. But just make sure you don't make the knot at its end where you made the stitching. So now we're going to cut our Byers as our lace, or you can use crochet thread and make a lace, or you can just use this and make a lace, whichever is fine. So you make your lace and then you tie your lace up. So this should be it, guys. This should be it, but I add the net because it makes it look nice. So you see our thread is not visible at the end there. So now you pick your net and then you measure it across from where you started the beading, the stitching of the bead, to where it ended. Yeah, this way. So from where you started the stitching to where it ended, that's how the net is going to go around. I just put it around the whole slippers, it's still fine, but then I don't like it that way, so I don't do it. But if you think you should try it, if you think it'll look nice, that's fine, you should do it. So now you're going to pick your glue. As usual, this is I have only super glue around, but you can use Bead 7000, E6000, whichever of them you have around. But please, you can't use glue stick because the glue gets I don't know how to say, easy to remove when it's wet, but with this ones it will be there like forever. So use this ones. If you use a glue stick, and it won't last. So you can either use this glue or you can use E6000 or B7000 or fabric glue. Any of them will do. So that's practically it, guys. That's all there is to do. Very simple, very easy. There you go. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I know my video is still not the best, but you still take your time to watch it anyway. Thank you. And this is our sandals.